Hello, Sleepyheads. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Remy and I make ASMR videos. Today is going to be a short one because I just filmed nearly 4 hours soft speaking, but my throat feels like I can keep going, and I have something I want to share with you all real quick while we're here. Yeah, I just wanted to share something that I'm processing, a kind of win, a happy thing that I'm processing as a person with a history of, like a long-term history of mental illness. I've struggled with mental illness since my childhood, and in particular this story is about my body dysmorphic disorder. It is kind of funny that I'm choosing now to talk about it because whether it's just how my brain works or not, I am choosing like a time that I feel like objectively I wouldn't look my best because I just filmed for 4 hours straight. I'm tired. The lighting isn't as good as the sun has gone down. All this stuff. But I had a little more energy in me, and this is something I've been eager to share. Things have been really kind of negative on my channel lately, not hopefully too much overall, but in terms of the content I've put out. I've been doing a big venting series, like a big emotional dump by way of the Why My Summer Has Sucked So Far series. I don't even think I've had room in the title to say so far, to qualify it as so far. So Why My Summer Has Sucked. Even though, yeah, there's still more to come, so I could turn things around. And then I've also done a story time talking about crying in a Target parking lot. So whether or not I was able to bring some levity at moments, we can admit together that overall the topics of, not conversation, but the topics, the ramble topics on my channel of late have leaned a little more negative. So I'm excited to share something, to share with you all something about which I'm feeling really good, for which I'm feeling really thankful. So without getting too much into it, because that would take way too much time, like anyone's story of like their mental illness, right? But I have BDD, body dysmorphic disorder, and I'm largely in recovery as of the last few years. That's how I identify. That's what my experience has been. I've experienced a lot of relief, found lessening of symptoms, and I'm able to function a lot better, and I experience a lot less distress on a daily basis. Doesn't mean I don't still have issues, but yeah, things have been getting better. And I noticed something happened in the last few weeks that I never would have thought possible, and it was a big milestone for me and really helped me see my progress. Like, I know I've gotten a lot better, but it's a step beyond that, and shows that I'm continuing to push to take it's weird to say take back my life because I'm going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life, but because of the way time works, whatever moments you win, they're yours forever. It can't take those from you, you know? So when you take bits of your life back from it, those memories are yours. You know, that day or even that hour or that minute that you stole back from it, that's yours to keep, and you kind of just have to keep fighting for those for the rest of your life, and that can of course be really intimidating. Kind of, you know, a life sentence for certain mental illnesses that they're not cured, they're managed. But for now, all I know is I'm doing much better. So I want to share that experience with you, and I also want to share with you just briefly the onset, the story of how my symptoms first came on, like how my mental illness, this particular disorder, first entered my life, first showed up in my life. And I don't want to talk too much, I don't want to talk about how I perceive myself through my dysmorphia, or what my dysmorphia tells me about myself too much. I don't want too much focus on my face, as weird as that is. I always focus way more on my face than I need to or want to, and I really don't want to invite others to be doing that at this point. I need a break. Again, just part of taking my recovery seriously. I do sometimes need to draw a line with myself and others, just being like, I'm not thinking about that right now, I'm not talking about that right now. So it might be kind of complicated to bring up just a particular part of this about which I would like to talk. I just want to talk about where I am with it today as of this specific experience I had that was new for me and important. Again, a kind of like a benchmark moment in my recovery, or my ongoing push against my mental illness, or I guess just my ongoing fight against it, against BDD. I want to focus on that, offer that up to you all, and celebrate that. And I also want to just talk about onset, not how it manifested, the particulars of it. Don't want to get into all that, and don't want to talk specifically about my face and what I see and what I saw at my worst beyond just the moment of onset, because I think we don't talk about onset as much. Maybe we do, but sometimes it goes undiscussed, and it's interesting because for me it was unmistakable. It was unmistakable. I remember the moment BDD arrived in my life. Not that there weren't, I'm sure, many contributing factors, kind of laying the groundwork, setting the stage. Is that an expression? Laying the trap, whatever it is. Priming me for it, right? Because the mental illness, how it manifests as far as we know in terms of nature versus nurture, it seems like it is to some extent a range of reaction where maybe there's something in your genetics, but it also may matter, may pertain how your genetics interact with your environment, and what's going on in your home environment. Not always, and not with every mental illness, but with dysmorphia there are indications that can be a factor, and volatility in a home environment. So anyway, don't want it to get too much, too much into all of that. But there's also a lot of evidence that it's often comorbid with OCD. So dysmorphia, it's been the hardest time I've had with mental illness of anything else in my life. Certainly more so than OCD, which may surprise some of you. OCD is really, 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 really fucking hard. But nothing's caused me more distress nor taken more away from me in my life than my PDD. And I've never had it as much about my body. I think I kind of feel like a lot of the way I feel about my body. I kind of get this sense, as much as you can know about how other people see things, but I've gotten the impression for as long as I've had opinions about my body that that's more in the normal range. Like, unfortunately, too many people are way too hard on themselves and pick things about themselves apart, and I do think there are things I'm like weird about when it comes to my body, but I don't think it's like clinical. I think unfortunately it's more like cultural and socialized. It's profound. It can be really bad sometimes, but there was just a markedly different level of dysfunctionality and distress around what I was feeling and thinking about my face. I think I've had more facial dysmorphia in my life, and how I feel about my body is more akin to, like, a lot of people know what it's like to feel down without necessarily being clinically depressed. A lot of people love to throw around the word obsessive or even say, oh, I'm so OCD, when that's not necessarily true, you know? And I don't experience the former. I do experience the latter. But, you know, like, I think it's true similarly that most people know what it's like to be really, 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 really insecure with something about themselves physically and not necessarily meeting the diagnostic criteria for PDD, which usually goes along with some very peculiar behavior, like a lot of time spent on some pretty compulsive stuff, which again kind of indicates or like corroborates this idea of a dual diagnosis with OCD, or with it like being, with it working well with your pre-existing OCD, if you do have that, or coexisting OCD, and having kind of similar symptomologies. But yeah, so it's been the most distressing thing in my life, and BDD at a clinical level is accompanied with like a really high level of suicidality, social isolation, like self-isolation. And I do think that while not everyone has BDD, I do think that while a lot of people are exhibiting like indicators, like are feeling very dysmorphic in a lot of ways these days because of how we've been socialized, I also think that there may just be a lot of people with proper like BDD, which is sad when knowing what I know and knowing what my life has looked like at times. Like, there were times I was so scared to be seen by people, so sure that I needed to hide myself, that I would pee in plastic bottles in my dorm room, like locked away, and like go out in the dead of night to dispose of them. And that's obviously an embarrassing thing to share, but I just want to say, when I say like, oh, like, people know what it's like to be really unhappy with different parts of how they look, but they don't know what it's like to be like fully dysmorphic. What I kind of mean is that they're not, one isn't an escalation of the other. It's not like dysmorphic people are extra unhappy. It's a different thing. It's like a mental illness that is more about your preoccupation and your phobia around like thinking that nobody, your phobia, your preoccupation, your fixation, because I do think that it's totally possible to be as unhappy or more unhappy with how you look than a dysmorphic person, and there are still maybe things that your mind wouldn't think to do or you wouldn't put yourself through. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're sitting there and being like, who hasn't peed in plastic bottles to avoid being seen by like all of 8 people who live on your dorm room floor with you? But yeah, but yeah, it's not to be dismissive. It's also just like important, like on the flip side, me recognizing that I've had bouts of depression in my life, and I've also felt really, 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 really fucking sad in a way that I didn't think I could work through. And just knowing that that's not the same, and not because it's a competition, but just because it's not the same. And as dealing with depression in the long term. So yeah, I know, I think because of this weird distinction, like because I felt differently about my body, but there was plenty I felt insecure about, feeling short and feeling pale and feeling like wrong in all the ways that women especially are like conditioned to feel wrong. I had this insight that like, oh, I think that this is a normal level of feeling unhappy, and what's going on with my face feels different. There was an intense fear I can't describe that couldn't even be dispelled or like put to the side by just saying, yeah, I'm ugly. Okay then. I'm ugly. I guess I'm ugly. It wasn't like that. It's weirder than that, and it just doesn't work like that. We've seen people in the public eye kind of destroy themselves when they have limitless resources to put into their faces. I would say that not everyone does that when they're unhappy with how they look. Some people change a lot about themselves and clearly were unhappy with how they looked, but you don't look at them and immediately know that there's like a lack of emotional sobriety, like a lack of sanity to, be kind of, it's a rude way to put it, but speaking about myself, a lack of sanity really at play, because some people with all the resources in the world just end up looking like the best possible version of themselves, and they can throw money at whatever they don't like about themselves to some extent. And then there are those people you see who, with all the resources in the world, end up looking very uncanny, very strange. Not like, oh, that person got a little too much plastic surgery, but like, it's hard to imagine what they were aiming for other than just annihilating themselves. So the blueprint in their head must have been pretty uncanny, pretty strange. And when they had endless resources to achieve it, we get to kind of see what that looks like. Those are dysmorphic people, like I feel like I can spot them. And it's not to say that everything that celebrities do to themselves ends up looking great. But you can tell when someone, they just have no idea. They have no idea how their face looks, and yeah, they have no idea. So you feel like alien, like it wasn't about pretty and ugly, it was about normal and completely abnormal. So it's not like you can say, oh, like mix yourself in, like take a number, like get in line with all the ugly people. It's like everyone else on earth looks how they're supposed to look. Even they, you know, they all look different from each other, and they all look correct, human, right? Like, I would never look at someone with facial differences and be like, you know, they don't look the way they're supposed to look, even if they look very different structurally from other people. I can't explain it except to say that it's a delusion and a phobia. Like, there's something so deeply wrong with me that the way I look is unacceptable, and it upsets people, even if they won't admit it to my face. I don't want to get too much into this because this is that territory that takes a long time to talk about. Yeah, I'm getting into that territory. I could go on and on and on, but it's really hard to explain to people who think that it's just about like pretty, especially if you're a person with pretty privilege, and people are even more likely to be like, what the fuck is your deal? Just get over yourself. And it's not about that. Again, it's weirder than that. It's like a nightmare. It's like terror. It's hallucinatory. It's very strange. And so, to explain that, I'd like to tell you about the onset. So, when I was 11 or 12, I had insecurities like anyone else my age. I would put socks in my shoes to look taller and less like a little pipsqueak, which is funny because instead of stuffing my bra, I was stuffing my Doc Martens, and it was very painful. My feet hurt a lot at the end of the day. But yeah, I had my insecurities like any other kid, but I think I was within normal range, and I was not ever treated as like a pretty person at that age. I was not one of the like prettier girls in my grade, and I was really late to develop. So I was just kind of treated like this this nuisance. Like, I was known for being smart. I was known for being like sassy and scrappy, and I don't know, but not a lot of focus on how I looked. Just to be clear, like, not a lot one way or the other. I wasn't being told I was pretty. I wasn't being told I was ugly. I was just there. I wasn't getting a lot of attention from boys, but I wasn't getting like shamed too much around how I looked. I was teased a little bit as a redhead, but yeah, just like a normal, pretty much overlooked in that department, but told occasionally that I was like cute, you know, especially by my family. But yeah, biased parties, and I had lots of interests outside how I looked. I was interested in a million things. That's the thing that makes me the most sad about this. I totally lost that in a big way for a while. I really lost myself. So one day in 6th grade, I walked from the science wing. I remember it perfectly. I walked from the science wing into a bathroom in a kind of plaza area of the school called the Square. There was a bathroom there, like near the nurse's office and where a bunch of hallways intersected. So I walked into that bathroom. It was empty this time of day. It was like a smaller, like 2-stall bathroom. And I looked at myself in the mirror, like just glanced. I walked into the stall to pee and came back out and was washing my hands. And I looked in the mirror and I remember thinking, oh my god, like just terror, being like, I don't remember looking like this. Is this what the sensation was that I was just realizing, just noticing for the first time how ugly I was, how strange I looked. It was like my face shifted in front of my eyes, and I saw something really like ghoulish there instead. And that's what I saw for years after that point, until a few years ago when I really feel like I started seeing my face at all. Like, who knows how much we really ever understand our own faces, but seeing my face at all with any level of sanity or sobriety or whatever, even like in the right ballpark, anywhere near how other people were seeing me. Yeah, seeing myself for the first time in years, since I was 12, since that day, it was like a flip switched, a switch flipped, whichever you say, switch flipped. It was like a switch flipped, and I think that's a lot of people's experiences with onset of PDD. It tends to fall for a lot of people around second sentience. Your first sentience being like around 5 or 6, and you're like, oh, I'm a person, and your second being like your social sentience. So that's when a lot of people have their onset of PDD, and I was already like exhibiting symptoms of OCD by that point, for years at that point. But the OCD kind of just, it's hard to parse out like where I end and where it begins. It's kind of been with me for most of my life. I'm getting better at identifying it, but I don't know when it like first showed up. But the BDD, again, it was unmistakable. It came onto the scene within that like minute that I was in the stall. It's kind of funny that it was happening while I was peeing, but I just remember it's really strange, really wild to have seen myself in the mirror and been like, oh, there I am, and then came out of the stall and was like, who the fuck is that? And it's scary. Like, again, it wasn't about pretty or ugly. No one looked like what I saw. Like, it just looked wrong. Like, again, like a nightmare, like something really uncanny, which explains, I guess, why when people are trying to fix their faces who are very dysmorphic, and we feel very sorry for them, or I think we should, when we see them in the public eye and they're clearly struggling with that. I bet using what they see as a guide, like, of course, it's going to end up looking very funny. They're not seeing a human face. That's what I really need to emphasize. And that everyone else looked right to me. Like, I was jealous of every single person on earth, because I'd look at their face and I'd think to myself, what must it be like to live life with a face that's just normal and, like, in that way endearing? Like, because if you like someone at all, you're gonna grow to like their face, unless, in my mind, their face was the worst face, the scariest face, an unacceptable face, which is not even something I buy into as a concept, like, intellectually. So it's definitely a phobia. It's definitely a hallucinatory thing, a delusional thing. Yeah, anyway, so the moment, without further ado, the really exciting moment is I swam on camera underwater and like surfaced, like all these things. It's hard to explain why that was so scary for so long, but that's just something I never did, certainly would never dream of when I was at my peak of distress and dysfunction. And then it's just, since then, something I've had a residual aversion to. But a friend wanted to film me underwater for some scenes, for his short that I'm in and thought they'd be really cool, and I thought it sounded cool, and I just wanted that for myself, that experience. So I went for it, and it was a big deal, and my partner knew too. He waited until it was over and he was like, I'm so impressed, I'm so proud. And it's silly because it's such a little thing, but our mental illnesses can rob us of the littlest, simplest, sweetest things. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. Who knows what the future holds? Maybe I will regress. Maybe I'll, what's it called? Not backslide. I don't know. Relapse? Maybe I'll relapse. But being able to have a relationship with my face these last few years, like, that's my face, and I deserve to have a life, have a face, you know. I don't know, I didn't know what I looked like for such a long time, and not in that sense of like, oh, like, again, do any of us really know? Because we're all so hard on ourselves. I'm telling you, if what I saw in the mirror was true, that's a really scary possibility to entertain, but it was almost scarier realizing, and that's a separate story, when I realized I had BDD, because for a long time I believed what I saw, but it's almost scarier when you realize that what you're seeing might not be true, and you're making this up, because then you're like, oh, I'm psychotic. Like, some people with BDD imagine extra limbs and they really like see them. So when I say it's not an issue of like pretty versus ugly, like, it's hallucinatory and it's scary. Like, you see scary things and you think that's you, and you just feel wrong. You don't feel human. And yeah, I'll talk more about this in the future. I'm gonna take a break for now, for a while, from thinking too much about how I look, but I was just so excited about that, and I really wanted to share that with you. And if you're struggling with mental illness in particular, because they're all so different, but if you're struggling with BDD, just hang on. I can't say it gets better, so all I can ask is that you hang on, and as my best friend likes to say, thank you for surviving. And especially if you're feeling like suicidal around it because of what you're seeing, and how different, how like alienated it makes you feel from everyone else, and how ashamed you feel, and like you have to hide this thing, you have to like mask yourself from people in order to be tolerable. And that lovable is definitely off the table, but tolerable is even ambitious and wishful and improbable. You are lovable, and first of all, you are lovable. Sorry, I'm messing all of this up, but it's just coming out of me. You are lovable, and it is just a face, and I know that's, your brain is lying to you, and that is not to say that that makes it any easier, because what the fuck, your brain is lying to you. What do you do when that's happening? Like, it's your brain, it's your whole reality. So I hope that some things can call to you through that fog. You can see some light through it. Anything that makes you feel like it's just a little bit easier to get through the day and to survive, hang on to that. And thank you in the meantime. Thank you for surviving, and sending you all lots and lots of love. And thanks for listening to this somewhat different video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And wishing you a peaceful, wonderful rest of your day or